All right, today we're ranking a material that has, and I mean literally wrapped humanity in warmth for over 10,000 years. We're talking about wool. You know, nature's original smart fiber. The OG performance gear that sheep were rocking long before we ever cooked up synthetics in a lab. So yeah, let's get into it.
So that brings us to the big question for today, right? In our world of fancy, high-tech fabrics, is wool still an A-tier champion? Or is it just a cozy relic, a comfy sweater from a bygone era? That's what we're here to figure out.
Okay, so what's the big deal with wool anyway? Well, let's start with its most famous trick, which honestly feels a bit like magic. It keeps you warm even when it's wet. Think about that. Cotton gets wet, and it just steals your body heat, right? But wool, its fibers can soak up a ton of moisture and still keep those insulating air pockets working.
And here's another huge one, safety. Wool is naturally fire-resistant. It's really hard to get it to catch fire, and if you manage to, it usually just smolders and puts itself out. That's a world away from a lot of synthetics that can melt and stick right to your skin. It's like it has a built-in fire extinguisher. And for today's world, this next point is absolutely crucial. Wool is a natural protein fiber, which means it's fully biodegradable. You put it in the ground and it just goes back to being part of the earth. No fuss, no microplastics. It's a completely different story from so many of its synthetic competitors. Now, to really get a feel for wool, we've got to look back in time. Because this isn't just about clothes, you know? This fiber is woven right into the fabric of human history itself. So let's trace that legacy and see just how much this stuff shaped our world. Just look at this timeline, it's incredible. We're talking 10,000 years ago, people in the Fertile Crescent domesticated the first sheep. Fast forward, and by 4000 BCE, they're already weaving wool. The Roman Empire? They built a massive trade network around it for their tunics and cloaks. Then in the Middle Ages, the wool trade literally fueled the economies of places like England. And even after the Industrial Revolution changed everything, here we are in the 21st century, and wool is making this massive comeback as a top-tier sustainable material. Okay, so we've covered the history, which is legendary. But why has wool's performance lasted so long? What's the secret sauce? Well, it all comes down to its amazing natural engineering. This is not just some random fluff. It's a super complex, high-performance structure that's been perfected by evolution over millions of years. And when you put it head-to-head with typical synthetics, you can really see where it shines. I mean, look at this. For pure comfort and safety, wool just dominates in these key areas. Ask anyone who's into outdoor gear. Its moisture management and odor resistance are legendary. And that natural flame resistance we talked about, synthetics often need chemical treatments to even come close. But check this out. This number right here is the real showstopper, 30%. A single wool fiber can absorb up to a third of its own weight in moisture before it even feels wet to the touch. That's insane. And that is the secret to why it's so comfortable in so many different situations. It just pulls sweat away from your skin and lets it evaporate. Oh, but we're not done. Not even close. You see how wool fibers are kind of crinkly? That's called crimp, and it creates all these tiny air pockets. That's where the amazing insulation comes from. It's also super elastic and tough. Plus, it's got this natural oil called lanolin, which makes it antibacterial. That's the reason your wool shirt doesn't get funky after a 3-day hike. And you can do almost anything with it. Spin it, weave it, knit it, you name it. All right, so we've got this amazing natural science. But where does that leave wool in the modern world? Well, as of early 2026, it's still a major player. And I mean, in some really important markets. We're talking everything from luxury suits to hardcore performance gear. This donut chart here really breaks it down for us. Apparel is still the big one, right? Almost half of all wool goes into making stuff like sweaters and fancy suits. But take a look at that chunk for outdoor and technical gear. That's a really interesting, growing area. It's where merino wool has basically become the undisputed champion for things like base layers and hiking socks. And the market numbers definitely tell the same story. This is an industry worth somewhere around $8 to $10 billion. But you know what the big trend is right now? People want to know where their wool is coming from. They want it to be traceable, they want it to be ethical, and that demand is really changing the game, especially for high-end merino in that performance gear space.
Okay, let's be real. It can't all be sunshine and rainbows. Wool is incredible, for sure, but it has some pretty big weaknesses, and that's exactly why synthetics were able to swoop in and take over so much of the market. So it's time to get into the itchy truth about wool's downsides.
And this is where the rubber meets the road. First off, wool is pricey. You also have to be careful when you wash it. Otherwise, well, you end up with a sweater for a doll. It's also usually heavier than the synthetic options. But here's the biggest one, scalability. You can only produce as much wool as you have sheep. Meanwhile, you can churn out synthetics in a factory on a scale that's just mind-boggling. These are the real-world trade-offs that hold wool back. So, let's put it all together. We've got the epic history, the brilliant natural design, but also some very real, modern-day flaws. It's time for the final verdict. We're going to run wool through our 6 main criteria and see exactly where it lands on our ranking.
All right, let's look at the scorecard. Historical impact, a huge 8.5. I mean, it shaped entire economies. Mechanical properties and workability, basically how good the material itself is and how easy it is to work with, both get a massive 9.0. Super versatile, so that's an 8.5. But here it is, the Achilles heel, scalability and cost. That brings it down to a 7.0. Still, its lasting relevance today is a solid 8.0, which shows you it's not going anywhere.
So after we run all the numbers, the verdict is clear. Wool lands firmly in the high A tier. It's an absolutely elite, classic material. You just can't argue with its natural performance. At the end of the day, wool has more than earned its spot near the top. So why not S tier? Well, it just can't compete with the cost and sheer scale of materials like steel. Those limitations hold it back. But I think this quote sums it up perfectly. If leather protected us and paper recorded us, wool kept us warm. It's a foundational fiber, and its incredible comfort and performance lock it in as an elite, permanent resident of the A tier. And that leaves us with one last thing to think about. As we all get more and more focused on sustainability, wool's natural biodegradable quality makes a really strong argument for it. But then you have to think about the whole environmental footprint of raising sheep. So the question is, could this ancient fiber actually be the ultimate sustainable material for our future? That's a really tough one, and it's definitely something to chew on.